There's a level of strength that makes you seem untouchable, a level of focus so sharp, it cuts through fear itself. Most people never reach it, not because they can't, but because they flinch the moment life gets quiet. They run back to comfort, to noise, to distractions that keep them soft. But centuries ago, one man didn't run. He walked into silence, into solitude, and became a storm. His name was Miyamoto Musashi, the undefeated samurai who lived and fought by a terrifying kind of discipline. No luxury, no comfort, no mercy for his own weakness. He didn't train to look strong. He trained to become unbreakable. And today, you'll discover what that level of discipline really looks like and how you can reach it, not with swords or armor, but with your mind. Because discipline isn't about control, it's about freedom from everything that owns you. So ask yourself, when no one's watching, who are you becoming? When the world gets silent, do you still stand tall? Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll understand what true mastery costs and why it's the only price worth paying. If this story wakes something inside you, ask yourself one question. What's the first comfort I'll eliminate today? Like, comment, and subscribe. Not for me, but to prove that you're done being average. Now, back to the video. Chapter 1. The Boy Who Chose the Hard Path. Miyamoto Musashi was not born a legend. He was born wild, angry, restless, and forgotten. His father abandoned him. His mother died when he was a child. He grew up in a small Japanese village surrounded by violence, yet untouched by guidance. Most children played with sticks. Musashi sharpened his. Most ran from fights. He sought them out, not out of cruelty, but because he wanted to understand what fear was made of. He was beaten, scarred, humiliated, but every wound became a lesson. He learned that pain wasn't the enemy, softness was. At 13, he fought his first duel against a trained samurai and killed him. At 16, he swore a vow that shaped the rest of his life. He would never live under another man's command. While others studied under masters, Musashi trained alone. He slept in caves, ate little, spoke less, and every morning he woke up to the same thought, today I will be better than yesterday, or I will die trying. That's the terrifying beauty of his path. No one forced it on him. He chose the hard path. He built his life like a blade, sharp, simple, and ruthless. Ethan was 26, drowning in comfort. Every dream he had was trapped under hours of scrolling and self-doubt. One night, staring at the ceiling, he whispered, "I'm wasting my life." He deleted every distraction, quit his job, disappeared from social media. His friends laughed. His parents panicked. But for the first time, Ethan wasn't chasing motivation. He was chasing something Musashi knew centuries ago, the kind of discipline that turns pain into power. Chapter 2. The Art of Elimination. Musashi believed clutter kills clarity, not just clutter of the home, but of the mind. He once wrote, "Do nothing which is of no use." To most people, those words sound simple. To Musashi, they were life or death. He owned almost nothing, a single robe, a short sword, a long sword. No family, no ornaments, no possessions to guard, because he had learned the truth. The more you carry, the slower you draw your blade. Every object, every comfort, every opinion you hold too tightly dulls your edge. He ate little, slept where the ground allowed. When others spent years debating techniques, he practiced until silence replaced thought. Musashi was not chasing perfection, he was removing everything that wasn't it. To him, mastery wasn't addition, it was subtraction, and the price of purity was solitude. Weeks into his new life, Ethan looked around his apartment and saw his own distractions staring back at him. Stacks of gadgets, boxes of things he never used. Each one whispered convenience, but stole a piece of his focus, so he began to eliminate. Clothes gone, gaming console sold, even the desk clutter, empty. For the first time, he sat in a room with nothing left to entertain him. Just air, just quiet, just himself. The first few days were chaos. His mind begged for noise, but slowly the silence began to speak. He realized he didn't lose comfort. He gained direction. Because when you remove the unnecessary, the essential becomes visible. And in that stillness, Ethan understood Musashi's truth. Discipline isn't about controls. It's about clarity. It's the art of choosing what not to need. Chapter 3, The Duel with Self. Musashi fought over 60 duels and never lost. But his greatest enemy never carried a sword. It lived in his mind. He realized early that the most dangerous opponent wasn't the one standing before him. It was the fear, hesitation, and pride living inside him. He wrote, "The ultimate aim of martial arts is not having to use them." Each time he faced a challenger, he wasn't just testing his technique, he was testing his spirit. In battle, he didn't blink, didn't breathe heavy, didn't rush. His movements were slow until they weren't. He observed, waited, struck, not from anger, but from stillness. That stillness terrified people, because it wasn't human rage, it was something beyond emotion. It was mastery of the self. After every duel, Musashi didn't celebrate. He meditated. He dissected his own reactions, every flinch, every unnecessary thought, and carved them away like flaws in a sculpture. He was sculpting himself into a man who could not be provoked. And when you reach that point, victory is no longer about defeating others. It's about dissolving everything that can be defeated within you. Ethan's battles were invisible, but no less real. Every morning, he woke to the same war. Discipline versus distraction. He'd plan his day perfectly, only to find himself lost in endless scrolling, self-criticism whispering, "You'll never change." One night, exhausted by failure, he sat with a notebook and wrote, "Today I lost to comfort, then something shifted." He stopped avoiding the shame and studied it. He saw patterns, triggers, emotions, the inner duel Musashi spoke of. And day by day, Ethan began winning, not because life got easier, but because he finally understood the opponent, the self. Chapter 4, The Void. After years of duels, Musashi vanished. No one knew where he went, only that he walked into the mountains and didn't return for years. Up there, away from war and glory, he sought something greater than victory. He began to study nothingness. He called it the void. In strategy, he wrote, "The void is that which cannot be known." Most men feared that idea, the unknown. Musashi embraced it. He sat in caves for weeks, listening to wind scrape stone. He watched rivers move with no effort, trees bend without breaking. He realized the world doesn't fight, it flows. And mastery, he discovered, isn't about control. It's about alignment, the surrender to forces larger than your will. When you understand the void, you stop clinging to outcomes. You move without hesitation because you no longer need certainty to act. Musashi stopped chasing perfection. He began living like nature, calm, fluid, unafraid of change. That's when he became unbeatable. Because how do you defeat a man who doesn't resist the flow? Ethan began practicing what he called void hours. No phone, no music, no tasks, just stillness. At first, the silence was unbearable. He itched for distraction, his brain screaming for stimulation, but then, slowly, the noise inside started to fade. He began noticing small details, the hum of the air conditioner, the rhythm of his own breath. It felt like falling into a vast inner space, empty yet full. In that silence, Ethan realized he'd spent his whole life chasing progress without presence. The void wasn't nothingness. It was awareness without fear. And for the first time, he wasn't running toward the future. He was standing fully in the now. Chapter 5, The Unseen Training. After returning from the mountains, Musashi was no longer just a warrior. He was an enigma. He had no lord, no students, no possessions. Yet his presence carried the calm weight of a man who knew something the world didn't. People expected endless sword drills, but Musashi's training had shifted inward. He painted scrolls with delicate precision. He carved wooden statues with the same hand that once held a killing blade. He wrote poetry so quiet it felt like prayer. Each stroke, each word, each cut of wood was the same practice in disguise. He was no longer training his muscles. He was training his mind to move without resistance. The true way is in every art, every act, he wrote. Once you know the rhythm of one thing, you know the rhythm of all. Discipline, he realized, wasn't confined to battlefields. It was how you sit, how you breathe, how you pour tea. Every motion was a mirror of your state of mind. And so Musashi lived his philosophy quietly, a storm hidden behind still eyes. Ethan's life had also transformed into ritual. He woke before dawn when the city still slept. He trained, read, wrote, worked, not out of obsession, but reverence. He no longer needed external pressure. His rhythm came from within. When friends mocked his rigid habits, he smiled, because what they saw as discipline, he felt as peace. There were no dramatic battles, no applause, no shortcuts. Just unseen work, small repetitions done with total presence. And in that stillness, Ethan found what Musashi had discovered centuries ago. Mastery is invisible. By the time the world sees it, it's already been earned in silence. Chapter 6. Death of the Ego. In the final years of his life, Musashi stopped dueling altogether. The man who once fought 60 battles now fought none. He moved to a quiet cave called Regando, the cave of spirit rock. There, surrounded by silence and stone, he wrote his last words, the Book of 5 Rings. Inside it, he revealed the truth that warriors, kings, and scholars had all missed. The greatest victory is the death of the self that craves victory. When you attain the way of strategy, he wrote, there's nothing you cannot see. Musashi's final lesson wasn't about domination. It was about disappearance. The ego that once demanded recognition, respect, and revenge was gone. He became like the wind, invisible yet unstoppable. He no longer swung his sword to win. He moved because movement itself was the expression of truth. No tension, no pride, no fear, just presence. That is the highest form of discipline, when your identity no longer limits you. When you no longer act to prove who you are, but because you simply are. Months into his new life, Ethan faced his collapse. A business deal he had worked on for years fell apart overnight. Everything he'd built, gone in a single phone call. But for the first time, he didn't panic. He didn't curse the world. He sat still, breathed. He let the fear rise once and then watched it fade. He realized he had lost things, but not himself. That night he wrote, when the ego dies, life begins. He finally understood Musashi's last truth. You win the moment you stop needing to. The scariest level of discipline. People think discipline is hard. They imagine early mornings, cold showers, sacrifice, but that's not the scary part. The scariest level of discipline is what comes after all of that. When effort turns into silence, and silence turns into power. Most people chase motivation. A few learn discipline. Almost no one goes beyond it, because beyond discipline, there's disappearance. Musashi reached that place. He stopped fighting for approval, for victory, even for legacy. He had become so still, so devoted to truth, that life and death were the same motion to him. From one thing, know 10,000 things, he wrote. When you know the way broadly, you see it in all things. That's the level where your discipline no longer looks human, because it isn't driven by desire. It's driven by essence. He didn't need to appear strong. He was strength, quiet, unseen, complete. It frightened others because it reflected what they lacked, control of the self. And that's the paradox. True discipline isn't aggressive, it's calm. It's the kind of calm that makes chaos tremble. When Ethan's world fell apart, he didn't collapse, he transcended. Deadlines missed, clients lost, yet his heartbeat stayed steady. He walked outside that night under the rain, no umbrella, no rush. Every drop felt like truth washing him clean. He realized the old Ethan, the one who chased success, praise, validation, had died quietly, and in his place stood someone unrecognizable, A man who no longer needed external order to feel peace. A man who moved with intention, not emotion. A man whose silence was louder than any victory. That's the scariest level of discipline. When nothing outside you can shake what's inside you, because the battle is over. And you finally won by becoming the storm itself. Ethan's apartment was nearly empty now. No trophies, no distractions. Just a mat, a journal, and a quiet man who had learned to sit still in a world that never stopped screaming. Months of silence had changed him. Not outwardly, but in ways that can't be seen. He didn't react when problems appeared. He didn't seek praise when things went right. He simply acted with precision, calm, and presence. And then life tested him. One morning, his company partner betrayed him, sold his project behind his back. The kind of betrayal that would have once sent Ethan into rage, panic, or despair. But not this time. He listened, nodded, then said, "I understand," and walked away. No shouting, no revenge, just silence that carried the weight of a man who no longer needed to prove anything. That was the moment Ethan finally understood Musashi, because Musashi didn't become undefeated by being stronger than others. He became undefeated by mastering himself, by killing the part of him that needed to win. Ethan stood by the window that night, watching the city lights blur through the glass. He thought of all he'd lost and realized none of it mattered. He hadn't become emotionless. He had become empty of noise. He smiled, not because life was easy, but because it no longer frightened him. That's the scariest level of discipline, the kind that doesn't need applause, the kind that moves like water, unstoppable yet silent. Because once you stop being ruled by emotion, distraction, and fear, the world can't touch you. You don't become cold. You become clear. That is what Musashi found in the cave. That is what Ethan found in the silence. And that is where mastery begins. The strength that frightens others. There's a kind of strength that doesn't roar. It doesn't flex or shout or demand attention. It moves quietly, but when it does, the world notices. That's the strength Musashi carried into every duel. That's the strength Ethan found when everything else was gone. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's the kind of power that frightens people. Because it can't be controlled or provoked or broken, strength that frightens others is the only strength worth having, because it's not built on ego. It's built on discipline, on silence, on the willingness to go where others never will, into the lonely places inside yourself. That's where Musashi forged his edge. That's where Ethan found his peace. And that's where you will meet the version of yourself the world has never seen. The question is, are you willing to go there? Not tomorrow. Not when you're ready. Now, ask yourself, what's the first weakness you'll eliminate? Is it distraction, doubt, pride, fear? Write it down. Name it. Then begin the duel. Because once you face your weakness, once you cut it away, you'll understand why silence is so powerful and why few ever reach it. If this story moved something in you, don't just leave inspired. Act. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe. Not for me, but for yourself. Because every story here is another mirror, another test. Stay disciplined. Stay unseen. And remember, the scariest level of discipline is peace.